Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Pleasure to speak to you. How are you today?
Hello.
The last, so we're expecting a lot.
Maybe we could begin with a brief introduction to this amazing film, Men Up. What can people expect when they watch it?
They expect to see an unexpected story, this clinical trial for Viagra that took place in Morrison Hospital in Swansea, which no one seemed to know about until we read the script. And I guess it's a story about five men and their lives and how difficult it is for them to communicate this thing that's happened to them all, respectively, which is erectile dysfunction, and how that's affected their lives negatively, and how this trial has then changed everything for them.
You know, it's not a topic that, yeah, like you say, most people would have no idea that it was in Swansea in 1994.
No idea. No.
First launch. But Matthew Barry's script, you know, I mean, it's captured so much heart, so much humour in tackling what is still, let's face it, quite a taboo topic. Yeah. When you first read that script, what jumped out to you, and why did you want to get on board?
Well, the fact that it happened in Swansea and that was a real thing in 1994, that seemed incredible. And then it's the parts. There's such cracking roles and sensitive, deep, profound, really, this and hitting on this problem, societal problem, global problem of the loneliness of men for not speaking out, reaching out, because that's how we're brought up. That's how we're bred. Especially in Wales, actually, it's quite a tough, men are men. Of course, it's changing now. In my childhood, you're never allowed to show any emotion if you're a boy, nothing. And keep it all to yourself and don't share anything and never show weakness. It was very part of the culture. I think it is all over the world still. But and it puts that to rest a bit and shows that unless we find the courage to communicate, we can't progress.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of everything that Paul said there, and the storylines were all so strong, and it's approached in a way that, because it's sensitively, but a film like this could so easily turn into a bit of a, lads down the pub talking about erections, but it very much isn't the strength of Matthew's script. I think that it's been done in a way that you really feel like you get to know these men. The read through, I was saying earlier, the read through, I don't think I've ever been in a read through like that, where usually they can be quite so stuffy. Everyone's just a little bit nervy and they don't necessarily want to be there. But this one was just, it really came off the page in the read through, and you felt like you really knew all these men, and then their families or partners and wives, and how you can really see how this kind of incredibly debilitating problem that they have, which affects their manliness, has really manifested itself so terribly on their lives. And how actually the first step to their healing is actually just talking about it, in whichever way that happens. And it's just really, I think it's so warm and funny, and you're gonna cry.
And as you were saying there, like, what I love about it is each of these characters, they're quite contrasting, but they're so fleshed out, and you get such a strong sense of who each of them are. And obviously the situation for each of them is completely different. Yes. And so I guess that's also helps audiences, find someone that they can relate to. Maybe you could say a little bit about each of your characters and how you saw them, how you prepared to play them.
Well, no, I think you're right. Firstly, and it's like everybody can see themselves in this, men particularly, perhaps, but no, not necessarily. I mean, we're all carrying burdens, and one of the things about, not everybody's healed by the pill, but all of them are healed in one way or another. They all find the ability to go forward, and some of them were considering taking their life, and which is the other epidemic that's happening, that male suicide rates are off the scale. No, I think it's, my particular character is Tommy, who's a type 1 diabetic, erectile dysfunction problems in a relationship with another man. Well, I won't go into the spoiler part of it, but and he's just an overthinker, highly sensitive, And I think sex has been very important to him. I think he's been a very sexual person in his earlier life. And then when this is taken away from him, it's tragic. And I think also it doesn't go into the fact he's suicidal, but he could be. He could easily, being so highly wrought, consider taking his own life. I'm sure he has at some point. So the stakes are very high for all of us.
Merrick he's just turned 40. So I think he's a bit younger than the other guys, but he's married, he's got 2 beautiful children, married to his sort of childhood sweetheart. They live in in a house. He's got a job. They're not wealthy, but then they're working class family. And then they're both his wife Fionn is diagnosed with cancer. He's diagnosed with the diabetes. All this happening at once. So this perfect life on the exterior, and it starts to shatter underneath. And then he doesn't know how to communicate the fact that he's unable to get an erection. And he doesn't, and I think that starts to really affect the relationship. He feels like he's letting her down. He feels like he doesn't know how to communicate this with her. Feels like and of course for her, then she feels that he's fallen out of love with her, that he's maybe having an affair or something. They don't discuss it until it does all come together, and that's when things start to move forward for them. But you kind of you meet them at this sort of fracture point of their relationship, and I think that's really interesting to watch.
And I guess the fact that it's set in the 90s, we are taken back in time in some ways, thinking about attitudes towards issues like this, or even about homosexuality. So you can sort of see that how far we've come. But in other respects, you sort of think, well, is this still just as much of a taboo as it was back then? And these ideas of masculinity and men being able to open up and talk about things and make themselves vulnerable. So perhaps it's a bit of a double-edged sword in terms of the takeaways there.
I agree. It's 1994. Things have changed a lot in that time, and also very little. There's something about the reluctance in men to open up that's so deep and so historically present that I think it takes a lot to shift it culturally. And also views about gay life have moved on considerably, but not enough, nowhere near enough. So I think the film says that, really, this is where we are, but there's more to do. And it is, it doesn't end. It ends with a healing for all of them, but they've all got life ahead of them. They've still got challenges ahead of them. It's not a sort of everything sewn up, it's going to be fine. And some of that is cultural, because being a gay man in Swansea in 1994 was a closeted experience, and it's not that long ago, and there'd be a lot of it still. More's the pity. And I think talking about erectile dysfunction is still taboo for men whose identity is so welded to a sense of Welsh virility that it'd be very hard to open up to the extent of allowing yourself to be the butt of the joke, because it so often is in comedy, isn't it? Erectile dysfunction is just a joke. It's a joke. It's just funny. There are funny bits to it. There's funny bits in everything, but it's mainly awful for the burden of the person carrying it.
Yeah, again, I agree with everything. I think that we are moving forward. I think men, young, I think that, we're going to have a generation of young boys. Perhaps that'll be different coming through now. I think the way that we bring our boys up has changed. But still, we have this there's still a lot of men who can't really talk and don't want to talk, or feel like that they can't talk. And often, a lot of it can be perhaps that now we're supposed to be emotional, but we're supposed to be hard. And there's a bit of confusion in that middle ground as to what being a man is, which I think we need to sort of really solve as a society, because to move forward, we need, everyone needs to know and to be able to feel free to be emotional and feel free to express their emotions in order to not be driven and, overrun by the stresses that life will inevitably throw at you. And I think that this film really does explore.
Yeah, exactly. We all face huge obstacles. Nobody skips through life without facing something, very difficult. And it's just, we all want to pretend life's not going to be like that, but it is. And one of the great things that has happened since the 1990s is that, generally speaking, mental health is taken seriously and without prejudice. So you can speak more openly, and that's a really, really good thing, of course.